Amanda, the stream's up. I've just got the title.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn this over to the commissioner to get us started. And so glad to see all of you today.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ellis. We appreciate that so much. And good afternoon to everyone else, too. And we'd like to thank you for being here. And we're also very thankful for your being committed to strengthening the education pipeline here for all Kentuckians. So we really appreciate that. And today we have the opportunity to see how another recommendation from CEC has come to fruition through strong collaboration in the development of a Kentucky college and career platform. We will also be updated on the progress and action of the work groups, and I hope that you will engage in conversation and begin thinking about our priorities as part of the CEC that we should consider as we move into 2025. So at this time, I will turn it over to our good friend to see that he's back in action. Dr. Thompson, if you will, to get us started.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good to see everybody. Commissioner, it's good to work with you. Everybody on this Zoom, it's good to work with each of you. It's hard to believe that we are in our 4th year. It just seems like yesterday this was started, but this is our 4th year, and proud to say our P20 council's once again been selected as the best in the nation. That makes me even happier. And some of the reasons why we are doing the things that matter. We're connecting policy and practice together. We are doing the things that are leading the nation in both of those. A lot more to do. I just want to thank you all for the work that you've been doing. Amanda and you and your team are just absolutely great. You know, I like the conversation we're starting to have now, connecting our graduate profile to the profile of a graduate or to those expectations that P12 may have. Also, like, if you haven't had a chance really to see our latest information on dual credit, wow, good stuff. We've been asked, I was asked to come to Texas and talk about some of this in a couple of weeks, but I can't go. So I'm going to connect with them soon and do that. Couple of items that I will ask us to think about as we're going into this year. Representative Tipton, good to see you, because I think it is important that we look at what are those things we need to do to really move us forward. We had a chance to talk with the commissioner and our presidents on things such as, you know, how do we get more of our teachers dual credit certified? How do we get more of our masters that are related to the direction we want to go, whether STEM or whatever the area is that we're needing in Kentucky. So we're connecting more than ever those items that are needed, P20 education that are needed to get our students truly engaged in the economy. And that's obviously what we're all about. But the last thing I'll say, it is about quality. It is about access, no doubt. But we want to make sure that we give our P12 students as well as our higher ed students the kind of education they need to take it to the next level. It's why we're doing things like the graduate profile, but it's also why we're doing things like the CEC. So as I want to turn it back over to you, Amanda, I guess I just want to say one thing that I want to be clear about. This work that we're doing matters. You see us bringing to you all the time the things we've accomplished that has come out of these meetings. And I hope you're keeping up with that. I hope you're keeping up with that we're not just talking, we're putting things in action. And we'll be talking Representative Tipton and many others this coming legislative season about how can we do more of these things that kind of help us to move forward in this state. So I'm proud to be a part of this team. I'm proud that you guys are still willing to be a part of this team. And more than anything else, just know that this is not just making a statewide footprint, it's making a nationwide footprint. So thanks a lot, Amanda, and I'll just turn it over to you now if I could.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Thompson, and thank you, Commissioner. It's great to have you guys here. I know the Lieutenant Governor will be coming in soon later on, and she'll hop in definitely to speak. We have an agenda that really is reflective of the work that you have driven, and we're so grateful for your commitment. And really, the work you're going to hear about today literally is what you all drove as priorities, and we are acting on them, and we want to share that with you today. So we're going to start off with a recommendation that you all had made if you go to the next slide. Thank you. So we're going to, in 2021, back in the day when we were still in mask and all on Zoom, one of the recommendations for successful transition to post-secondary was we need one place to find all these things for potential students, whether that was high school students or adults coming back into upskilling or getting their education, maybe our military folks. Whomever. And so we have worked since that time in collaboration, CPE, KDE, and KY Stats, and then with lots of stakeholder feedback and lots of discussion to create that. So you get to see a preview of that today, and that is because of you. And then we're going to review the work group progress. You're going to, as a whole group, going to be able to see one on the educator workforce. That work group has worked to gain feedback from the workforce and actually put a focus in on principals. And I will not steal Danielle's thunder, so I'll let her share that when it's her turn. The second one that you'll have some recommendations that you'll see from Wendy and team is about affordability and communication around that for families and students about how do you pay for continuing your education. That was brought up as a big concern early this time last year, and so we have pursued that. You're also going to have then a choice to either go to hear about advising or the competency work. The competency work, if you remember where Kentucky United We Learn at KDE has worked on the profile of a learner, and then CPE has worked on graduate profile. Where are we in this? And so exciting collaboration, intentionality around that, and really encouraging. And then the other option you'll have is advising. And so this has always been something you all have had issues about, of just like, we need more advising, we need more guidance. And so the Kentucky Advising Academy that you all recommended 3 years ago has now worked in collaboration with Education Strategies Group and others to create a framework, grades 6 through 12, for future planning, post-secondary advising, to start meeting those needs. And it's already getting out into the field and really has been well received. And so Mitzi and Kelly will be able to tell you about that. So we have a full agenda. So I'm going to move us right along. As I said, you all had asked for in 2021, one of the work groups suggested action was improved communication for access and awareness of what you do to get to any kind of post-secondary. Feeling like that there were lots of barriers and lots of stops that really made it hard. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Fletcher. Jessica is representing KY Stats. She has been a pivotal teammate in this work and helped to decipher data versus programmatic people like me who don't get the technical side. And we've really pulled together. So Jessica, I'm going to leave it to you to share, and hopefully we'll get feedback. Feel free, folks, to use the chat because we definitely want this to be conversational as well. So Jessica.
Thank you, Amanda. Really excited to be here and to show you all what we have spent many months this year working on. I'm here in the room at CPE today with Trinity Walsh and Kelly Norman, who have been great partners in helping us create content for this website. And with my background at KY Stats, I've worked very closely with our team to come up with a data set that we are really excited about, that will help students really understand that classroom to career pipeline. So I'm just going to jump right in and kind of talk really quickly about the CEC recommendations that Amanda mentioned earlier, that came out in 2021, where you all were really asking for a communication strategy to both equip high school students and adults who are looking for that next step in their career path, to kind of help them understand what's out there. Also, those goals were to help people understand how to fill out the FAFSA, and to really kind of get those numbers for FAFSA applications back up to where they once were. And then, of course, strengthening those local partnerships between early post-secondary access and advising opportunities across the EC continuum. So we kind of took that framework starting back in 2021 and have started shaping what you will see in just a few minutes as what we have turned into a really robust platform that helps people really understand where they start, how they choose a career, how they get the education for that career, and then ultimately apply and get the job. So in Kentucky, we have really great resources. We have the Kentucky Career Center. We have Kia's website. We have all of the resources that KOI Stats has on our public-facing website. And then we have things like the Work Ready Kentucky Scholarship and the Students' Right to Know dashboard, which, as I'm sure Representative Tipton will remember, kind of set the tone for how we communicate about both education and careers, how much people are making in those careers once they graduate, and giving people an idea of how much student debt there might be once they create those. So all of that existed, but there really was no one website that connected the dots, and that's what Futurity set out to do. So Futurity was created to sort of start with 3 steps. So choosing a career path, choosing your education, and then starting your career. So we really are trying to create a culture to where people really understand their paths from the classroom to the career. And then ultimately this will help Kentucky reach its goal of increased educational attainment and labor force participation. So with that, this is the brand, which I'm sure you already noticed with my backdrop, but this is called Futurity. And we worked with Red 7E, which is a marketing firm here in Kentucky, a couple of years ago to help us establish this brand. It's really meant for people to kind of understand that they're planning for their future, but also with a kind of Kentucky-centric theme around it, because Futurity, some of you might know, is actually a horse racing term, but ultimately the key word is future, and we want people to know how to find their futures, how to plan for and achieve the goals that they set out to make. So we actually have a test website set up now. We are not quite yet to futurity.org, but we do have a website that we have been taking around the state, working with different groups, both at the K-12 level and at the professional level and at the college level. So we've gotten some really great feedback that we have already integrated into the website. But what you see on this screen is something that I'm going to preview in just a second, but it is called the Future Finder. And this is backed by KY Stats data that is both our labor market information data and our higher education data in the background. So a student can go in and browse career names, and they will find things like the wage range from entry level through experienced. And they will also see things like the projected job openings just in Kentucky through 2032. And then if you scroll down further on this page, you can't see it here, but you will also see where you can major in some of those occupations at Kentucky's colleges and universities. So with that, I want to show a quick video, and hopefully everybody can hear it. I always have trouble with the audio, but I'm going to show this quick 40-second video, and then we will jump in. No audio.
No audio.
Oh. Okay, well, we're just going to pivot and go on to the next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we have three sections: the Choose Your Career Path, which is aimed at helping people kind of figure out what they want to do. So there are career quizzes. There is a life budget calculator, which helps people understand kind of what income they will need. And, you know, you type in your city or county, and it will tell you like what the cost of living is specific to where you live. So you can start understanding if the wages that are listed in Future Finder are realistic to where you live. There is the Continue Your Education section, which we have worked really hard to be accessible for both the K-12 student and your adults. So of course it links to information like KIA and FAFSA, but it also kind of walks students through what it looks like to choose a college or education and training program. And then finally, the Start Your Career section, we have linked directly to the Kentucky's Career Center's job portal. So it has a number of Kentucky specific job listings, which are current listed year round, but we also have like links in that website that go to like the Kentucky Personnel Cabinet, so people can browse state jobs, and then the Kentucky Educator Placement Portal, so people can look for education jobs as well if that's what their career interest is. So in addition to that, we have some information on resume creation, interviewing tips, and creating cover letters, and then tutorials about how to apply for college and enrollment. And then the Future Finder data is, as I mentioned, we are using KY Stats labor market information. But we're also working with CPE's education college data to list all of the majors in the majors portal of the section. And then we have a college and a college section that we are able to list things that are required by the Kentucky Students' Right to Know Act, such as graduation rates, the academic year cost after grants and scholarships, the loan default rate, and then we're also able to link directly to the school's website and the school's application. And then we have a really cool feature where you can see where in Kentucky that school is located. Like I mentioned earlier, we have been going around the state talking to, you know, anything from ninth graders all the way up through adult people who are enrolled in Kentucky's adult education programs. We have met with people at the Educational Labor Cabinet and the Kentucky Chamber to both show them what we've been working on and get feedback on tools that we can also be linking to. So those sessions have been just kind of pivotal for us as we're creating this content. I think one of the most eye-opening things for me was we were talking to a group of Shelby County 12th graders, and the minute we said, "What are your college plans?" there were 5 boys in that classroom that put their heads down on their desk. And that really told us that we have to talk about this a little bit differently. Like, we can't just call it college going. We have to encourage students that this isn't just about, you know, your traditional 4-year college. This is anything after, any education after high school that helps you get a credential to get the job you want. So we've really kind of pivoted our messaging a little bit in that direction so that we're not immediately making students feel uncomfortable and feel like that this is an accessible platform for them. So though, like I said, those feedback sessions have been just amazing, and we're really appreciative for all of the classrooms and groups who have taken the time to let us come in and show them the work we've done and try to make it better. So finally, we are in the process of planning our launch for the website. We are hoping to be done with all of the web programming and design at the end of this year. And we are hoping to have a kickoff on February 4th in coordination with Career and Technical Education Month. We have booked a space in the Capitol Rotunda to do a news conference. So in the coming months, you will be getting an invitation to that. But you know, in addition to the news conference, like I said, we really want this to be more of a culture change and not just a campaign. So we are hoping to create as many partnerships with schools, post-secondary institutions, career centers that we can to help spread the word. We really want to get posters with the Futurity QR code and web link in as many schools, career centers, and other public buildings as possible. So we'll be working on creating those in the next couple of months, as well as doing some search engine optimization once we get on our final domain at futurity.org. And then we want to start participating in events and career fairs and going around the state and training counselors and educators on how to use this platform so they can work it into their lesson plans and help students understand the many careers that are available in Kentucky and how to get to them. So with that, this is, if you want to scan this tag, this will take you to our test site, or you can just type in the URL bit.ly/futurity demo. We also have a feedback survey listed at the bottom here. So after you look around and get comfortable with the website, I encourage you to give us additional feedback because we are making changes daily to make the site as best it can be before we launch. So with that, I will pause, let you look around, and Amanda, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I'm going to give folks a second just to open up that QR code or the bit.ly and give them a chance to look. I do encourage you all to look at the Future Finder. If you're on your phone, it'll be in that top right menu box, and you'll be able to see what Jessica was talking about using Kentucky data. But please feel free to dig in. And hopefully we haven't lost you for the rest of the meeting, but it's a heck of a start, and really appreciate it. So we do have a few comments and questions, and the commissioners said we appreciate you taking time to talk with Student Advisory Council. I believe they had some great recommendations.
Yes, and we made a lot of changes based on that first round of feedback. That was our first student group, and their comments were really eye-opening as far as, especially like telling us things like, you know, students aren't really on Twitter or Facebook anymore. So their comments about wanting to see the posters in school have really helped shape how we're thinking about marketing this as well.
Absolutely.
I will say about the data set that you're seeing now, there are a lot of data unavailable fields. So that was a test data set, and we are working on finalizing the version of the data set that we will be going live with. So just because you don't see data for a specific major or college doesn't mean it won't be there when we go live. So, but if there is something you're missing or something that you would like to see, please let us know.
Yeah, definitely. A question from Representative Tipton says, what is the funding source for developing Futurity, and what will be the cost to implement on a statewide scale? Do you want me to start on this one, Jessica, and then you jump in? Sure. So great question. We partnered with KDE and KY Stats. As I said, actually, we started out representative with about $300,000 of ESSER money to develop this. To continue it and have the safety functions on it, and to host it on Azure, which is like a cloud-based piece. It's going to be at least, we're doing the smallest amount, around $35,000 to maintain and do enhancements each year. That is staying with the current partner that we have until we have a really solid established site. We feel really good about it, but we know there needs to be enhancements, and we want to continue that, and we want to do this well. We would love to build out further with sponsorship or support with additional funding. That continuing funding is actually being held by CPE. So we have picked up the continuing cost of about 35,000 plus our staff time. But yes, that's what we've done with the funding thus far.
Well, I want
And
to
it
be more
is, it will be
specific,
statewide.
Amanda,
It'll be
because
completely available. And the other thing we don't have on there, and that is on purpose, is we do not have a place for students at this point to make any kind of personal account. We did not want personal identifiable information, especially for underage students, because we know about FERPA and all that, and we just don't have the capacity and the bandwidth right now to really make sure that everybody's safeguarded and what would they need to save. And so that may be in a future iteration. A lot of people have asked about that, but we intentionally did not do that to start this because we didn't want any debacle or to derail us.
Amanda, can I jump in and say something, please?
Please, sir. Yes, yes.
Yes. I want to be more specific with Representative Tipton. Amanda is just telling what the maintenance cost is right now, the minimum maintenance cost. Depends on what we want to do with this. This is really something unique, and we really decided to take what little money we had to build this out. It's going to take staff time because a part of this is really keeping things up and going. Yep. So do we have the money in recurring costs? We don't. So this probably will be one thing we will come to the legislature to ask about. There's obviously nothing like this that's been developed at this level ever, and it's groundbreaking. But I don't want to make it sound like that it is going to be inexpensive for the return on investment. It's going to be huge, inexpensive, for return on investment. But we don't have recurring costs right now. I found some money to pick up, but it was obviously not in my budget. But we felt like it was so important for this work that we would figure out how to keep the maintenance costs going.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Thompson, 100% right. We will absolutely get the PowerPoint to you. The video has been placed in the chat, so you can watch it. It's a really quick overview. It's nice. Jessica created that. And then it says, actually, these two, Eddie had said if a group would like Jessica or someone from her team to present this to their group, how could they schedule it? Reach out, email me, and we would love to get it in front of folks. We'd love to get the feedback. We are looking at all different types of users to weigh in. It always helps us to expand. And then even with Jim, thank you for the compliment, and we would love to get in front of superintendents to show this. Anytime we have put this in front of counselors, they have said, give us some lesson plans to consider doing. It very much aligns with the KAA framework. It's just a tool really to be there. And so we would love to do that. And thank you, Jenny, for the feedback. Dig in and let us know where things aren't working. This is why this really belongs to Kentucky. Our goal around this is not to be a state website or an acronym that people don't know, but it's to make folks feel worthy of wherever they are in their journey, whether that's starting out figuring out what kind of career they want to do, or if they're a middle school kid going, I don't even know. You'll notice on Future Finder, there's even the career pathways that the high schools offer. And so that's being worked on too, but even middle school kids can look at their high school and eventually their ATC to see what pathways are offered. And our institutions are on there and a map is on there. So it really can make it feel as personal as possible for them to seek out wherever they are. Dallas, just so you know, because I know you're a huge advocate for the military, really good feedback about that. And so the feedback, and Jess can add to it, I know we need to wrap up too, but is that also Jessica and team added a page of if you're coming to Kentucky, childcare centers, and being about the communities, because some people were saying, well, if we want to stay in Kentucky, or if we want to go to school here, what's in the area. Like, we have to take care of our family, and where do we find jobs, and where do we find things? And so, it's really, really try to be very tailored and intentional to our audience. And we are picky about words, and we're picky about reading levels, just to make sure it doesn't turn people off, but it brings them into opportunities in Kentucky specifically. A few more comments. Sherilyn would love for you all to present a KSCA to the Kentucky School Counselors. Yes, we will follow up with all of you. Marketing to middle school students, important. Commissioner Fletcher, you could not be more right. It starts early and often. They got to know what's out there and what's available. I agree. And then Dallas had said, I see a lot of opportunity to use this within our veteran community and those returning to Kentucky after serving. Yes, yes, yes. We absolutely could not agree more. And that's what we wanted to do with this. So that's why even adult education has been key. We have the career centers that they have linked into these sites. So it's very Kentucky based. That they can see what's offered. We have a ton of resources. It's just getting them into one place. And just so you all know, with Kia, we have talked to Kia a lot. So Joe Carroll has talked with us. Her staff has talked to us. Diana probably has been on a call. So we obviously are not asking for their personal information, but we take them to the My Kia site. So we've gone through with them their scholarships and things they offer, and it links it right to the Kia website. So we're not duplicating anybody's work. We're getting them there without them having to know what each thing is. So when you look into how to finance your education, that does not replace any language for Kia. It takes you to Kia. So to the My Kia place for them to then establish an account and do their own personal finances and that are appropriate for them.
Amanda, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Has this been
Yes.
shared with Cabinet for Economic Development or any of their folks?
I don't know that we've done economic development. I think we've just done the labor
No.
cabinet.
That's correct. We did Education and Labor Cabinet meeting a couple of months ago, but we have not had a chance to talk to the Economic Development Cabinet.
I'd like to loop you in with Scotty Ellis over at CD.
I think that's a
Love
great
it.
idea, Susan, because so much of what we put together here in this space, I mean, I think Secretary Noel and others will be able to really use this kind of material to impress folk who want to move to Kentucky. So, Susan, I think it's a great idea.
I have one other question.
Yeah.
I know you said we're looking at FERPA, but one of the things that would be great if we could have is data on the back end to see that would help advise us of what the kids are saying, where they're going, what they're looking at. And that would be super
Yes.
helpful for us on a lot of levels.
We will
Yes.
have that from Google Analytics. So we will be collecting that
Yes.
through our search engine optimization from the get-go once we get to the futurity.org domain.
Thank you very much.
Great ideas. If you have any other ideas, this is not the end. We'll bring this back up in January, just with any other updates. You will get an invitation to come for the kickoff. We really hope you'll be there. You are the ones who suggested this. So we're trying to bring these things into fruition through collaboration, and this is powerful. So it's just beginning. So thank you, Jessica, for leading this conversation. And Robin, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I have made a list of the folks we'll be getting in touch with to follow up for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again, Jessica, for sharing about the Futurity website. I'm really excited about the possibilities and the enormous progress behind this recommendation from the CEC. It's really all great news. We look forward to the launch of the resource in February. And kudos, love the background. So you're going to have to share that widely too, so we can all promote Futurity. So thank you. At this time, we are going to transition to some brief updates regarding the work groups and the 4 work groups that have been meeting since April. And so the first one we're going to hear from is in the whole group. And this one is from the post-secondary affordability group. And so I'd like to introduce you to Wendy Kane. She's the Assistant VP for Finance at Murray State University. And she has led this small but mighty team on post-secondary affordability. So Wendy, I will share your screen, your slides. And if you're ready, we'll go ahead and get started with your presentation.
Thank you.
And I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to start off by co-leading this group and then eventually leading this group. And I will say I couldn't have done this without Amanda and Robin's assistance. They have been pivotal in us being successful. So thank you both very, very much. All right. So the group was established by the CEC. We actually started having meetings in May, all the way through November, actually as recent as last week, to finalize our report that we'll be submitting hopefully soon to Amanda on this presentation. So as you can see, the people that were involved in the group, we have a very diverse group here, and we had a lot of different views and opinions that were presented in the group. So, Robin, if we could go to the next one. Yes. The guiding questions that we started out asking with the group is what stakeholders need a voice in the conversation? What knowledge is needed from the stakeholders, funding for the students, what do families needs, and also what we could implement on a larger scale. We reached out to high school students, but we also wanted to talk to students that were outside of the high school. And we also later will show that we did some stakeholder feedbacks to try to talk and target to parents, as well as current students and students that are considering post-secondary education. Some of the things that we looked at on here would be the scholarships, as well as the FAFSA support. And we especially looked at targeting adult learners. So as you'll see later on, we really did have a diverse group of constituents that we worked with to try to make sure that we were looking at the whole picture. Okay, thank you, Robin. So the consensus of our group is that the perception is that post-secondary education is not affordable. And that's the most prevalent barrier that we have identified. The one thing that we also have identified is that it seems that maybe better communication could make it seem that there's more access to be able to overcome this barrier. What we found was there's lots of resources already included in the state. It's just that a lot of different agencies are not aware of the resources to be able to communicate that with the students. So we want to make sure that, all of the resources that are already available are used and used cohesively. The landscape that we reviewed that credentials are life-changing. Students' post-secondary debt has been trending down. We do have some slides to show this later on. Enrollment is declining among our low-income students. Obviously, this year, the FAFSA has been challenging. I can say from experience, the FAFSA is always challenging, but this year has definitely been an extreme challenge, to say the least, for us to be able to get students and families involved in completing the FAFSA. Adult learners is also one of the groups that our whole task force felt like we really needed to target. And maybe when the conversations of affordability were being discussed, maybe they weren't at the top of the list. So we want to make sure that that group of students are always included in this communication. And then just communicating the value of post-secondary education is critical to make sure that everyone understands that, yes, there is some cost to it, but it does have life-changing effects to get a post-secondary education. As I mentioned before, some of our stakeholder feedbacks is we had some financial aid resources and platforms that were available. Some examples were KIA, Upward Bound was some that was mentioned. High school counselors were also mentioned, college fairs. Also mentioned to us were social media, Snapchat, TikTok, things like that from the obviously the younger generation. That's where they're getting a lot of their information. There is a gap in awareness. So, you know, when students get to be their junior and senior level, really they should have a good plan of what they're going to do, where they might go, make sure that they've looked at resources. So we want to make sure that early communication is key to making sure students are thinking about these things earlier than their junior year for sure. Affordability was another item that came up repeatedly when choosing the college, making sure that they are aware of the potential unexpected cost. And so just transparency and education on the affordability and just all of the costs that could go associated with going to college. Also, financial aid literacy is kind of inconsistent across the state. There is a lot of financial aid literacy. There's a lot of financial literacy across the state, but the messaging is not always consistent. So when you're targeting, you know, your middle school or even your high school or your first gen parents, they're not really sure what's the best source to get that information. The next stakeholder feedback was community and peer support. It was recommended or brought to our attention about KIA being in a lot of the communities, as well as Upward Bound programs in the communities, and just making sure that those resources are known to everyone. I mentioned about the communication and education earlier. It was brought up, they felt like as early as middle school, you really couldn't start the communication too early. But also making sure that the communication is directed and the parents are included. So even if you wanted to start that education earlier, making sure you're targeting the parents as well, so that they understand the whole landscape of the post-secondary education and the benefits and the cost, and can create that plan and start that early on. Clear and concise with language. That was another feedback we got. Sometimes some of us that work in financial aid, there's lots of terms that we say repeatedly. Those are not necessarily terms that everyone knows. And so when you're putting that communication out, it's just being aware to make sure that the communication and the websites, everything that we're providing to families and students is something that anyone could walk in and understand. Because when we start talking loans and FAFSAs and all of that, the language gets overwhelming for many. And the last one was on financial burdens and general reflections on student loans, middle-class family needs, and the value of the information. So with this one, it was repeatedly mentioned about transparency of the loans, and, you know, when students or families would take out loans, they really didn't understand the full effect of what that meant. So transparency was a word that we saw a lot. A lot of middle-class families had mentioned that there's not as many resources available to them. So making sure that we market or target what resources are available to all students. And then just the value of the information and the education around post-secondary education, making sure that we really get that messaging out and across. I've included a couple of slides, actually 3 or 4, I think, just to kind of support what we were looking at. This is one about the FAFSA that shows that the FAFSA was trending down this year. KIA has done a wonderful job, I will say. I've seen their ads. I've seen them everywhere. They've contacted us. So they have done a wonderful job in trying to get the FAFSAs up in Kentucky. And I just want to say thank you for that, because that benefits us all in higher education, as well as the students that are in Kentucky. But currently, I set my timer so I wouldn't talk too much. So I'll wrap it up real quick. But currently you can see that our FAFSA is still trending down. So how do we overcome, that messaging that's out there about the change in the FAFSA and how difficult it's been, and trying to make sure that everybody understands it's accessible? Right. The next slide we have is supports the low income learners are down, as well as adult learners are down. So this was also one of the items that we used to really learn about the adult learners and the resources that were available. The next slide is also about the value of higher education. We were using this in some of our stakeholder feedback as well. And then the last slide is provided by Kentucky Stats, and we appreciate this, but this is showing that the difference in your wages with a post-secondary education can be significant. So how do we get this message out early to families is obviously one of the guiding questions we had. Possible supports. General understanding of college costs, including guidance and clarity for our students and families about the functionality of the FAFSA and the types of aid. So just making sure that they understand that, yes, filing the FAFSA is the first step, but what aid comes from that FAFSA. It's not necessarily all the aid that they're going to need to go to college, and making sure that they understand that. Making sure that we're clear on the loans and their, the effects that loans could have on the students after they accept those. Early education for students regarding scholarships and community civic resources. Also, just making sure that the word is out for everyone, that they need to make sure and be aware of anything that might be available in their community. A lot of our guidance counselors do a great job with students their senior years, but if you have the student that maybe they're thinking about going to school, but they're really not going and meeting with the guidance counselor, this might be something that they might not learn about their senior year. But if we include that in our messaging, maybe early on, it's something that they would think about when they thought about going to college. Utilization of engaging in appropriate communication and outreach strategies. As we mentioned, social media and TikTok is one of the things that it seems like the younger generation is looking for. They want it quick. They want to be able to look at a snippet and learn something quickly. So a lot of the information we give is a lot, and it can be overwhelming to the students. And so we need to find a way to get them to engage in a very small time and learn from that engagement. High school communications and advising. We have great counselors that do this already. I think just enhancing that, maybe at an earlier age all the way through, so it's repeated and it just becomes second nature. And then communication consultant. Hiring a communications expert to leverage, if you will, all the assets and resources that Kentucky already has in place for post-secondary education. I think this could be very beneficial. There's a lot of messages out there. It's just they're not the same wording, so that what it leads to confusion among some of our parents as well as our students. So the top recommendation from our work group is that a statewide communication and information strategy be co-created and adopted by multiple state agencies and education and nonprofits. We do think it needs to be consistently implemented to make sure that we reach the many audiences and stakeholders and inform them and assist them about the post-secondary affordability. Some of our recommendations would be to assemble a team of experts. We already have experts across the state. If we could identify some of those from key agencies, nonprofits, and partners, and create maybe a team that could work with the communication strategy. We did meet with Futurity. We saw this and it was great. I will say Our team loved it and it was very useful. We think that the communication strategy could be used along with rolling out Futurity, working that in together. Leveraging the high school advising plans and resources and the individual learning plans that are already in place, making sure that those are utilized more across the board. I know they're a requirement, but instead of maybe just completing them, make sure that students understand what they are and the benefit of those. Focusing on key messaging, the value of post-secondary education, as well as the cost of attending college, but what options are available for financial aid, scholarships, and then community resources that could help. It's just really kind of putting that all in a communication package. All right. So if anyone has any questions or if you have any suggestions or things that you think we have missed, the team is more than willing to add some things into this report. We'd like to hear from you. You're welcome to put that in the chat, or we can discuss that. But these items were really the consensus of the group. We started going down the path of, at the beginning, kind of like futurity. And then we found out about futurity through all of our meetings and just kind of want to build on that with the communication and using the resources that Kentucky already has available.
All right. Thank you so much, Wendy, and to your entire work group. It's clear that you've done so much hard work and a lot of thoughtful collaboration going on there. And so I know that this group is eager to hear feedback about their ideas and recommendations. And so please feel free, if you want to come off mute and make a comment about it, feel free to do that now. Or if you'd like to drop a comment into the chat or a thought or an idea about this presentation and the work of this post-secondary affordability group, please feel free to do so.
Robin,
Yes.
a couple of comments.
Yes.
I know I think it's true about the low income students and the adult learners. I'll just mention some of the work the performance-based funding work group has done with the performance-based funding model. We have added incentives for universities to work with students who are low income and our adult learners. Also, just recently, there'll be some changes to a metric for students who are first generation college students that will give our universities and schools the more added incentives to work with those groups. And I think that's very important. I know the FAFSA, there have been legislation introduced in the past to make it a requirement with waivers. We've never been able to be successful with that. There are some obstacles to that, but hopefully there are some things that we can do to continue to inform people about the importance of it. I believe the U.S. Department of Education has announced that next year FAFSA won't be available until December the 1st for next year, which is another delay. But hopefully that process can be smoothed. I'm not for sure the new FAFSA system is easier than the old system, but hopefully we can smooth that out. But it just takes continual work, and I think a lot of it is like you said in your presentation. People don't know what they don't know. We have generational poverty in our state, and people have grown up in homes where nobody's ever gone to college. They've never graduated from high school before. So it's just getting that information out there and letting them know that there is hope for them. And the key to that's education.
Thank you, Representative Tipton, for all of that information. I
Robin,
think,
can I jump in and say something?
yes, please
Quickly,
do.
let me build off Representative Tipton's statement. Yeah, we have now put some direct incentives in our performance funding model that I think will help a lot. But it's still on the other end, how do we get students and everybody to get engaged? I think futurity really is going to help us tremendously there if we can get it up and keep it going. But a couple of things, I've been Joe Carroll, you may be able to help me on this, but I was just on the phone with DC yesterday, USDOE. December 1, it will be the new FAFSA, but it's still looking like we're going to have a few problems or so. Have you heard something different?
No, that's correct. The December 1st is the launch date. KIA is the only state agency in the nation that has been able to participate in some early beta testing. And so we actually have, at this point, I want to say around 2,000 Kentucky students that have already been able to file their FAFSAs to try to see if we can head off some of these kinks. But what we've been told is that some of the issues that were problematic for families this past year, like a parent without a social security number, that's going to continue to be a problem for this new FAFSA cycle. Things went smoothly, other than those things that we already know or have been issues during this rollout year. So we'll see how it goes, but at least our counselors and the schools that have partnered with us out there are aware of these hiccups that they'll be dealing with. So perhaps things will go a little more smoothly. We have been assured that there's not going to be system-wide shutdowns and things like that, everything crashing when families try to fill out their FAFSAs on December 1st. We'll cross our fingers and toes and whatever else we can and see if that happens. So that's where we are at this point.
I've got another update coming toward the end of this month, the day or two after Thanksgiving, from the assistant secretary. So if I know more, I'll pass it along. But Representative Tipton, I still think, and the commissioner and I talked about it, whether there's a bill or not, I do believe that we have to really focus a lot of attention on getting more of our students to fill it out, because once again, we left 58 million last year on the table. And I believe that it's going to be even tougher coming out of a debacle year to really get more people engaged in it, because the folks who we had been getting engaged in it, we see, at least with some of our data, Joe Carroll, you may have better data, that the lowest of low income really did not, once again, looks like they've backed off more. So we've got a campaign ahead of us, folks, in this area. So I hope we're able to figure out whether it's a statewide communications plan or whatever the case may be, that we can somehow get, once again, out in front of this. Now, I will thank Kia and others, though, because Kentucky did a really good job during this debacle year. I mean, extremely good job. I mean, we all came together as a team. KDE, Kia, us, everybody else gear up heavily to do some of this work. So, and we saw that working together like this really assisted. And I think next year is going to be as tough. We may not have as many technical issues, but it's going to be as tough to convince people that they need to get the FAFSA and fill it out, and the outcomes from that would be good for them.
Well, thank you all for the great conversation about post-secondary affordability. We're going to need to move on to make sure we get to all of our work groups today, but we definitely will continue to have this conversation, and you can look forward to the report that's coming, the full report that's coming from this group. I want to pause for just a second and welcome Lieutenant Governor Coleman to the meeting. We're glad you could join us. I wanted to just pause for a second and let you say hello.
Oh, thank you. I just popped in from another meeting, but it's great to see you guys on here, and I'm so glad to see our work continuing because it's so important. It's making a difference, and just thank you guys for everything that you're putting in to make this something that has an impact on students and families.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. At this time, we're going to move right on, and we're going to hear from the Educator Workforce Group. We welcome Danielle Pickens, who is the Chief Program Officer of the Urban Schools Human Capital Alliance, and she has been the fearless leader of this work group. So Danielle, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and I think you're going to present your own slides, correct?
I will.
Okay. All right.
Hey y'all, welcome. My name is Danielle Pickens. Like Robin said, I work with the Urban Schools Human Capital Academy, which is a national nonprofit that supports human capital and talent leaders across the country to solve our biggest talent challenges that we're seeing in schools. And I had the privilege of facilitating our work group on the K-12 educator workforce. And so I just want to make sure y'all can see my slides. And first and foremost, I want to thank both Robin and Amanda for their fearless leadership in helping to bring this group together, as well as the members of the work group, folks on this call like Diane and Jim and Dallas, who really set a course over the 8 sessions that we had together to say, how are we going to make an impact on the educator workforce? Now, when Robin and Amanda came to me, they said, we really want to think about the teacher shortage and teacher retention. And so I said, great, I know a lot about this, the work I'm doing across the country with other districts. You know, we could really do this. And the first meeting that we sat down together, the group said, the best way to impact teacher shortages and teacher retention is actually to focus on the principal. And so, you know, it was one of those moments where we all said, like, the principal is a really important part of the school community. They are the person who is helping to improve student learning and attendance at scale, improving teachers' working conditions, improving teacher job satisfaction, and really reducing teacher turnover. So if we want to focus somewhere, this is a really strong leverage point. And the data and the research actually shows this. So there's a lot of Wallace Foundation research that shows that if you can only focus on one position in a school building, the principal really is the key leverage point. And so in that first meeting, very quickly, the group gelled around, you know what? If we want to impact teacher shortage and teacher retention, we have to really figure out how do we help support principals better. And that was what we did over the course of our sessions together. So we started to dig into what are some of the challenges that principals are facing. And there were 3 major areas. One is a challenge around student needs that principals are recognizing. Since the pandemic in particular, there have been increases in mental health concerns in schools, increases in behavioral challenges, increases in diverse learning needs, more students with IEPs. This is a trend actually that's predates the pandemic. And there's just this idea of a complex tech integration. Kids always have their phones. It's a constant struggle. We have AI now. How do you begin to incorporate that? So that's one aspect of the job that principals are finding really challenging. A second aspect is the workforce needs are different. There are generational differences in how people want to work, what they're expecting from work. Many of us are working remotely. Folks in schools cannot work remotely, and there is a tension around that. We're seeing, and this is true across the country, increasing burnout, particularly for our teachers. They have the highest rates of burnout across all of the sectors that we're looking at. And we're noticing a lot of varied skill sets and preparation. Folks are coming with very different preparation routes, and also they may not have the typical skills that we have seen from folks who have gone through traditional teacher certification programs. And teachers are really looking for more collaboration. They don't necessarily want to be the only teacher in the classroom all the time. They want to be able to collaborate with their peers. So the job of the principal is really changing. Add to that the fact that the ed landscape is really evolving. Accountability structures are evolving. There are resource allocation shifts. ESSER just ended at the end of September. So some funding that was there to really try and come back from the pandemic has gone away. And principals need to be able to engage their communities and think through how are they making sure that they are compliant with the policies that are out there. So while the principal role has changed over the last 2 decades, our support systems haven't really kept pace with the demand. And so we are starting to see, and you can see this is your Kentucky principal turnover by year, that turnover since 2020 has increased. We think that potentially folks might have stayed a little bit in 2020 due to the pandemic, uncertainties, but you can see it jumped from 16.1 in 2020 to 21% of all of your Kentucky principals turning over. And this data is from KY Stats. In 2022, we don't yet have the data from 2023 or beyond. What's even more concerning is when you look at the principal turnover in your higher free and reduced lunch schools. So those are your higher poverty schools. The purple bar represents your free and reduced lunch 4. The blue bar on the left is free and reduced level 1. And so you can start to see that particularly in 2020, more of your less poor school principals stayed. And more in your higher poverty schools turned over. And this holds true if you look at your first quartile and your last quartile for every year except 2021. It's unclear to us as a group what exactly happened because all we got was the data. There wasn't necessarily any additional insights around the data as to why certain principals were leaving more. But this does hold true for what we're seeing across the nation. Principals and teachers in higher needs schools, schools with students who are living in poverty, often have much higher turnover rates. And that is a challenge because students need stability. So one of the big recommendations just coming out of our group was we struggled to find data. And so getting some additional data around principals specifically, why are they leaving? Why are they staying? Is one of the key recommendations coming out of our group. The second thing that we did besides look at data is we really talked to principals about what it was that they wanted. We said, if we're gonna do this work together, let's hear from principals. So we surveyed both current principals and aspiring principals. Current principals are in your current workforce, and your aspiring principals are normally in your educator prep programs or doing some course of study because they want to pursue leadership. Now, we had 144 current principals and 50 aspiring principals respond. And the overwhelming majority of folks said, I had to pick 3 top priorities. I wanted for the current principals an experienced mentor, dedicated time with a mentor, and additional funding for high needs schools. So the percentages here mean 57% of the principals in our sample said, in my top 3, I would choose an experienced mentor. 53%, I would choose dedicated time with a mentor. So that's our current principals. And you can see what one of the principals said in the open response. Being a principal can be, and typically is, a very lonely place. Having a mentor or a principal accountability person to talk to or even vent to is very healthy in this job. Every day, people come to you for answers, insights, thoughts, affirmation, and support. All that is great and a part of the job. So people aren't complaining about that. But very rarely do we get to go to people for those same things. Without that, burnout is a very real thing. So your current principals, these are the top priorities for them. The other things that they said that were also important were legal guidance. There's so many laws. How do we keep up? We're time strapped. And turnkey tools for staffing. If I'm going to be selecting people at my school, I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. Give me some tools that can help me make better decisions that I don't have to recreate. Someone likely has thought of this. Help me. On the aspiring principal side, you can see even more people selected an experienced mentor, dedicated time with a mentor in their top 3. 80% of the folks in this sample said that. And, when you're learning something new, it's helpful to have someone there that you can ask questions to, that can say, hey, here's how I've done it. They also felt that practical hands-on experience was really important. There was a sense that they aren't totally prepared for everything that's thrown at them. So being able to be in a school was really essential to them. Being able to learn how to budget was really essential. They also felt legal guidance and additional funding for high needs schools and students was important. And you can see the quote from one of the aspiring principals here. The educational landscape is changing rapidly, and no one person can know and do everything, but well-trained people with mentors can be highly effective. Plus, they're less likely to suffer burnout. So you can see in both of these quotes, principals they're tired. It's been a long couple of years for them. The job really has shifted and changed. And what I would say is we talked with principals individually through the survey, as well as P3, the Principals Advisory Council. And one of the things that someone on the Principals Advisory Council said to us was, I really appreciate you asking what experienced principals think too, because in the report, which I'll drop into the chat in a little bit, we did break out what we found from novice principals, people with less than 3 years of experience in the role, and experienced principals. And even experienced principals said, I would like a mentor. I would like someone else. There is this sense that once I've become more experienced, I don't need help or support anymore. And because I'm the only person in my role in my school building, it does feel really lonely. So that's what we heard from the principals. What we wanted to recommend as a group were in 3 distinct lanes, whether you're at the state, whether you're in districts, whether you're in ed prep programs. One of the resounding pieces of this was, please invest more in school leadership mentorship statewide. Provide funding for it. The co-ops are doing some of this work, but there isn't necessarily funding available to it unless a district sets that aside. People are saying mentorship is so important. Please think about that work. The other ideas for the state were developing one online resource hub. There was a sense that in Kentucky, you all have a ton of really rich trainings, materials, and principals are like, we can't find it. We don't have enough time in our day to actually go out and find it. What is the one place that we can go to? The state could also improve data collection of principal metrics, maybe going a little bit deeper into why people are leaving or staying. Increasing financially sustainable prep pathways to the principalship. We know that you all have principal apprenticeships along with teacher apprenticeships, and that goes a long way, but just continuing to make this an attainable route for people, and then investing in additional funding for high need schools. On the district front, again, making sure that mentorship is really focused on and setting aside dedicated time for this work. It is important to make it happen. Prioritizing funding and resources for high need schools, potentially curating monthly legal and resource briefings. Folks said things are changing so quickly. What do I need to know? And give me the short version, not the long version, because it is hard. Folks are out in the building, they're walking around. They don't always have time to read through the legal implications of the work that they're doing. Provide ready to use staffing stools and create or grow affinity groups for principals of color. And peer learning networks, particularly for folks who are more experienced. Now, I will say the sample size of principals of color, African Americans, Latino in the group was very small, but that was one of the top things that they chose. Finally, on the ed prep side, continuing to facilitate mentorship, right? You're just going to hear the word mentorship a lot. Partnering with districts for more immersive leadership prep experiences. There is nothing like being in a building to learn about how to do this job. Provide applied learning opportunities. This particularly came out in our report. We link to the open responses. This particularly came out around budget and HR. Help us learn how to budget, because a lot of folks, when they're in AP roles, they may be assigned to discipline or a particular content area, but they're not learning the full scope of the principalship. So help us learn the things that they'll need to know as a principal, and then offer targeted coursework in school finance and human resources. So that is what we are recommending as a group. I am going to run into the chat here and drop our full report. It's quite long, but we do break it out into key sections so you can see what's happening. And I see Commissioner Flesher wrote here, the principal role evolves continuously, and much like the teacher role, each evolution seems to increase the responsibilities. I think it's such an important point. We keep adding on to the principal job, but we never take things away. It's the same with the teacher role. And what you're seeing in education broadly is just this sense of folks are really burned out and saying, I don't think I can do this long term. And that's already a trend. So if we want folks to say, we have to really say, how are we supporting people? We can't just ask them to be accountable without a reciprocal support structure available to them. So that's our group. I would offer you, there are some discussion questions here, and I don't know where we are with time. So Robin, I'll stop. But, just what are the things that are coming up for you? Where do you potentially see natural connection points in your current work? What can you build on? What might need adjustment? And then where might you think about better coordinating to create sustainable principal supports? Because this role is so key to so much of what's happening in schools. If you have a great principal, you can make a lot of really wonderful things happening. And I know that there are many of you in this room, but if you don't, it can be a real challenge for all of those teachers and students. So I want to thank you and thank my group. It's been really fun.
Danielle, I think we have a couple of minutes for folks to respond if they'd like to come off mute or drop ideas or thoughts into the chat. We'll take just 3 or 4 minutes for some response.
Robin, if I may. Robin, this is Commissioner Fletcher's. If
Yes.
I may.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the one thing that maybe was missing is a lot of our very successful principals have great relationships with their community. How do they connect with their community? How do they utilize their community to connect with their kids? How do they meet the needs of their community? So, even in our new accountability system that we're looking at, we're really focusing in on local accountability and developing local accountability by having partnerships with parents, partnerships with community members, partnerships with legislators, so that I think the longevity, and again, this is just anecdotal, is when principals have a strong relationship with their community and feel supported by their community. I believe that we'll see more some longevity there, and I think that's also key for us is how do we help them build those processes, those communication networks where they're really involved in their community, connecting with their community, and just meeting the needs of their community moving forward. So again, everything that you had there, I agree wholeheartedly with. I think it's great input, but that would be the only thing I would add to that.
Yeah, and I think when we looked through the open responses, folks said, I do need help with community engagement. What are the things I can do here? And could an experienced mentor help me think through, how do I engage this community, especially if I'm new or I haven't been here for that long? Penny.
Yes, Penny.
Hello, everyone. I'm just curious when the principals talked about just having so much to do and the job is morphing. We know that all of these roles are morphing into things they necessarily can't control. Did SBDM come up at all as far as whether or not they felt that it made their jobs easier, it was more complicated, more challenging, and if SBDM was a vehicle that was actually used to increase those community partnerships?
It did not really come up. Robin or Amanda, I would sort of look to you all as well. I'm not sure that I heard or saw it come up all that much. There was the sense that the principal felt isolated and lonely and had a hard time knowing exactly how to access. And so that could also be something that they need to be thinking about. How do I use the folks in my building more strategically? And there were some folks who said, I'm in a school where I am the only sort of person, given sort of the way ratios work. So I wonder, Amanda or Robin, is there anything that you all heard?
Ironically, Penny, I don't remember any of them bringing up SBDM, which is so interesting that you even brought that up, because not for good or bad, it just wasn't even brought up. It's super interesting you said that.
Yeah, and what I think is curious is to this point that sometimes there's so much information for the principals. I think unless they're, it feels like it's manageable, they may not even realize all of the resources that they have available, because that was a key finding for us, that there were so many resources, right? And people didn't know how to access them or how to use them wisely. So I appreciate that question.
Okay,
Eddie.
Danielle, we've got Eddie Campbell's got his hand up and Jenny Sawyer, and then we're going to have to call the conversation after that. We got 2 more comments. So Eddie and then Jenny.
You got it.
Thank you, Robin, and thank you, Danielle, for your presentation. This was very enlightening. I think you could take everything that you just said and apply it to teachers also, especially when it comes to the mentor portion, and that is very vital. I think going into these roles, like because what was said, these positions are very isolating. You know, you're in those buildings. My question is, did you get any data on the length of time with this turnover? Was it, I know with new educators and early career educators, it's like 3 out of every 5 leave the profession. Is this tracking true with principals, or are they just switching back into the profession? Usually if you've got a principal, if you've gotten a degree to become a principal, then you've been in the profession for a little while at least.
Yeah, the data that we had from Kentucky was not all that robust, at least from what we were able to access in the short time that we had. But what I can tell you nationally is that the experience level of principals and the turnover rates of principals are happening much more quickly in line with teachers. We know that the experience level has come down. The Wallace report that we link to in our paper is very clear about that. And what we are noticing is particularly in our highest need schools, right? Those free and reduced lunch level 4, quartile 4 schools, those schools have the least experienced principals. And as you might imagine, they also have the least experienced teachers. So when you think about compounding gaps, students, teachers, principals in those schools, they're just not getting enough of what they potentially would need to close those gaps because your teachers are less experienced, your principals are less experienced, and they're turning over at higher rates. So there's actually a real challenge, particularly in the high need schools as well.
Thank you.
Hope that helps. And then Jenny, which is my last question.
I just, first of all, that was so insightful, and I just agree with just about everything you said. But I do want to bring up, just from my lens as an admissions officer and working so much with high school students, the need for us to really talk to our young people about principal jobs as leader, and talk about leadership roles in K through 12 education. And we talk a lot about teachers, but I do think that we lose some of our best and brightest students that are coming out of our high schools, coming out of our colleges, who do not even think about going into education as a profession. And we need to talk about it more as opportunities for leadership so that we do attract some of those students. And, we might want to begin with some conversations with our student voice team. We have some amazing leaders in student voice, and to really have an honest conversation about them, about, why they're not choosing. They fight for education while they're in high school, but they don't want to be educators. And I think we need to have an honest conversation about how do we change that.
I think one thing that didn't come up, because we were so focused on principals, but is the sense that education broadly is not a place where most parents at this point would tell their children to go into. And this is not just me saying that. There's actual research by Matt Kraft out of Brown showing how on almost every indicator, the perception of teaching, which then sort of leads to the perception around should I be a leader in this profession? They're all down. They're at 50-year historic lows. And so I think if we're really going to turn this around, we have to start to say, how do we get people interested again? How do we make this an attractive field for folks? And there are people nationally who are thinking about this, but I think you're right. If we can get people interested early on and say, this is really feasible, and this could help you build a wonderful career over time, or at least for a certain amount of time, we have a lot of work to do there. Networking is key for our school leaders. The perceived loneliness that's associated with the big chair can be heavy. So many text groups that I use to gain insight from my peers. Yes, that peer networking is so important. Knowing that you're not alone is really essential. So where you can bring people together to help them do that is important. So I know I'm at the end of my time. I really appreciate it. And this was the work of this group is phenomenal. I encourage you to read this report. I have been just floored. And so especially the folks who know me in this group who've been on my committee, thank you so much.
Thank you, Danielle. We really appreciate and definitely have generated a lot of conversation. So if you have additional comments, please put those in the chat. We'll revisit in January, and we really appreciate and welcome all comments and feedback. It is time for us now to hear from our last two work groups, and we're going to do that in breakout rooms so that you can have the opportunity to visit one or the other. So in room 1, we'll have post-secondary advising with Mitzi Holland and Kelly Norman. And then in room 2, we'll have our P20 competency framework. And we'll be hearing from the K-12 side as well as the post-secondary side in that group. So I'll open up the breakouts here in just a second, and you can select the room that you'd like to go to, and it should automatically send you there. Sarah, I've made you a co-host, so you can take care of the PowerPoint in that room until I get there, because I'm going to remain in the main room to make sure that everybody gets where they want to go. So I'll open up the breakouts now, and they'll be open for 25 minutes. So just be forewarned that after 25 minutes, they will automatically close. So share the airspace in your rooms if possible. So let me double check here, make sure I've got 25 minutes. I do. So I'll go ahead and open all the rooms. And if you don't see that pop up on your screen, you should click on the bottom and it should say breakout rooms, where you can select the one that you'd like to go to. See folks disappearing from the screen already, so I can see that you are heading where you want to be. And if anybody's having trouble, you can just let me know and I'll help you get to the room you want to go to. See, Miss Diana, I see you're still in the room. Would you like me to assign you to a room, or are you good? Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Breakout room number 1.
Number 1. Yes, ma'am. Here we go. Amanda, are you okay? Oh, yeah, there she goes. All right, Danielle, are you staying with us or are you taking off? Okay, you're on mute.
I saw it as soon as I did it. Hopefully that was helpful for folks.
Oh, it was perfect. It was perfect. So much feedback. Appreciate it.
I mean, I'm really good. It seemed like people, were in it. I hope that they read the paper because there's just so much good in there.
Yeah. They usually do. They usually do when they.
Yeah. So I was like, there really is so much good in there. And so I'm going to meet with the group for one last time on Monday and share a little bit about, how this meeting went, and we'll close out together.
Yeah, I hope to be able to join. I gotta head off now to the competency framework room. So
you got it. I'm gonna leave.
Okay. I'll see you soon.
But I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay. Will do.
All right. We have about 8 minutes remaining. Thank you for sticking with us. A lot of information today. I'm going to give about 30 seconds to 1 minute for those just to hear about quick next steps for the group. So I'll start with the competency group. Just kind of what are your next steps, really brief, and we will send out PowerPoint so everybody can see everything. I know there was a lot of interest in all the work and excellent engagement today. So I don't know, Sarah or Melissa or Jana, do you guys have a quick next steps piece that you'd like to share?
I'll briefly touch on, for K-12 in particular, we continue to think about local accountability in our statewide system and what that means to lift up portrait of a learner and related metrics into an accountability system. And so that's really what we're working on in the months ahead with our Kentucky United We Learn Council, if anyone wants to tune in. We're also waiting for our preschool engagement to really look at these competencies across the board and dive deeply into what that means for the preschool space.
Wonderful. Thank you.
From the post-secondary side, we are getting ready to create a strategic implementation plan for the Kentucky graduate profile, because this is going to, it's going to affect all courses. It's going to affect all co-curricular experiences. And we need a good communications plan, and we are going to work further with KDE and see what kind of resources that we can come up with other than just the crosswalk.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Mitzi.
Thank you. So with the advising work group, we have been very involved in developing the framework. And so I think Kelly's going to drop the link to the framework in there so you all can take a look at it. But our framework is currently being piloted in 5 districts, and the next steps would be to actually implement that or launch an implementation strategy statewide for the post-secondary advising framework that is aligned in grades 6 through 12 around 4 key post-secondary advising areas. And we are also starting a community of practice around advising, and we have our advising work group members who are reviewing resources that are on the post-secondary advising toolkit to ensure that we have the most current, up-to-date, and best resources available. So we're really partnering with a lot of those folks and with KDE and KIA and other districts and district level partners to really make sure that we have an effective strategy for the implementation of the framework. It is aligned to the individual learning plan, and we want to ensure that we are sending the message that this is not a new initiative, but something that will support the existing great work that's already being done in Kentucky around advising, and very grateful for the recommendation of the CEC on the importance of advising.
Yes, thank you so much. So I know we gave you a lot of information and stuff today, but this group, it really is dynamic. The sharing, the ideas, you offering to let folks come in and share the work and the resources are going to only move us closer and strengthening our pipeline. Just as the commissioner and President Thompson said earlier, and even Lieutenant Governor as well. So the last thing I'm going to ask you to do before just reminding you, our next meeting will be January 15th. And that will be virtual. We are very careful to schedule around the session so you all can be in attendance for sure. But the last thing I need you to do is in the chat, will you please put 1 or 2 topics that really resonated with you today? It could have been a sub conversation or a piece of information that was shared. You're like, you know what, that really hit home with me today. I need to know more. So drop that in the chat for us. It can be a word. It can be a couple of words. I'm going to give you a second to do that. What stuck out to you? They're like, that resonated with me. I think we can go somewhere with that. And this will help drive our conversation in January. Yes. Yes, Jim, lots of connections for sure. workforce, mentorship. Yes, needs for futurity. Yes, thank you. Yes. Keep them coming. I would love to see it. When we get back together in January, we will, before that, you will have the invitation, like I said, to the kickoff of Futurity. We'd love to have you there. If you have other thoughts, we'll be sending out the reports as a follow-up. We always do a follow-up email with you. So we'll be sending out the reports, the PowerPoints, so you can simmer on some of those. A lot of you all have asked, can I see that again? Or show me the competency work again, that we just have a lot that we get into this. And so we'll make sure and provide that. If you have other suggestions for networking, you all hit a home run today with Futurity. You just dropped in a lot of great ideas that we had not even approached yet. You did the same thing in breakouts, I know, and I just really appreciate that networking. That's the beauty of this group. And so if you have other ideas, please drop them in. I think there's real potential in us making gains just by sharing our network of influence. So other than that, I'll turn it to our co-leads, Commissioner or President Thompson. Is there any last words you all want to say before we?
Well, I'm going to let the commissioner take the lead here, since I took a minute or two longer last time on in our breakout room. So, Commissioner, I'll let you go and I'll finish up.
The thing that's so wonderful about this is the connection when we go P through 16 here, where we talk about principal mentorship, where we're talking about teacher workforce, whether we're talking about portraits for graduate profiles. The work is aligning together, and this continuum is playing an important role in that. So thank you to each person for your contribution. Thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for your hard work. And I hope that you're seeing that there's results coming from this group. So again, thank you so much for that. Dr. Thompson, to you, sir.
Thanks, sir. Just to piggyback, because he's absolutely right. You did take something I was going to say there, Commissioner. So, you know, these things are aligning. They're aligning all the way from early childhood through the workforce. We're getting the conversation, more than the conversation, going on how we're bringing everybody on the front end to look at the necessarily end that we want to have. And the alignment is really clear. And I'm once again repeating myself, and I will every time I'm on this group. I love that Kentucky's leading this. And this is not superficial stuff we're leading. I mean, as I said in the last group meeting, we are starting to define quality and not just quantity. And no other state has been able to do this. These connections we're making with profile of a learner and the graduate profile, what we're doing around futurity, all of these items are all connected, but each one individually is powerful, right? That anybody would love to have. But we're doing it all connected. So CEC works. Now, are we going to have to look at where we go in the future, how we fund some of these things, whatever? We knew that all along, right? Many of us have put our skin in the game, and I'm glad that we have, and I hope we can continue as much as we can. But I would ask us, Amanda, in this next meeting, let's talk a little bit about truly a summation about what are all the steps we take next to make sure that we build on some of these great successes we're starting. I mean, I know the commissioner and myself and Lieutenant Governor and others on here will come together and say, how do we continue this relationship, this partnership, in a really real way, as we've been doing, and not in the superficial way that many other states are doing. So I appreciate it. Good job. Thank you, everyone. Penny Christensen, I don't think you're on the line anymore, but Penny just won. I think she's only going to be on school board in Lexington. Yep. I was going to congratulate her. But as a whole, folks, thank you all very much, and be careful and be good.
Thank you all. Have a great